Welcome everyone, bienvenidos. Well, SAN, just in a nutshell, is a global impact network that co-creates practical solutions supporting 600 million smallholders, adopting region ag practices to fight against the climate, biodiversity and livelihood crisis. But this today is about you and about our panelists. And we have agreed we will have short presentations, 5 minutes each. We have Bambi, we have Isaac, we have Fabiola, and Andrew is joining us online. So we will make our best to answer your questions and attend your comments. And with that, I would like to ask Bambi to say some words about yourself, please.
Thank you. My name is Bambi Semrock. I lead our food and agriculture program at Conservation International. And I've been there for about 22 years now. And I feel like the tagline of this session is likely the tagline of my career at the same time. So wonderful to be here, and thank you for the invitation.
Gracias, thank you. Isaac, please, some words about you.
Good afternoon. My name is Isaac Charles Akwa Jr. from Ghana, working with the Environmental Protection Agency and the GEF Operational Focal Point for Ghana, and also managing the Ghana Landscape Restoration and Small-Scale Mining Project in Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you, Isaac. Fabiola, please.
Hi. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, sorry. I'm Fabiola Zerbini. I am the director of the Forest Department. Forest Department is part of the Biodiversity, Forest and Animal Rights Secretariat inside the Environmental Ministry in Brazil.
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 Yes,
Brazil. Brazil.
Very good. And Andrew is not here currently, but anyway, he will join us later online. He's the Natural Resources Management Specialist for the World Bank in South Asia. All right. And with that, I would like to start. Should we start with you, Fabiola? With Brazil? Yes? You have, yeah?
Do you want to make a question? Can I speak on my...
Just start.
Just start, okay. So,
Obrigado.
yeah, well, trying to connect a little bit now with the angle of the session. First, we are not almost, but we will launch the new public policy on restoration next Monday. It's a kind of a new because it was launched firstly in 2017. The target to restore 12 million hectares was established since 2017 for the country, and also is connected with the NDC, the Paris Agreement. So the first time when we spoke about 12 million was in 2015. But now what we did is to bring to the reality of nowadays, to the current context, to the challenge and opportunities of the restoration in the current context, the whole public policy and the plan. And more than a plan is a political pact as well, because you cannot restore 12 million hectares, and not only restore 12 million, it's not only a number of hectares, it means a lot, but it's the final impact that this number will really boost. So one of them for sure is biodiversity conservation, but you do have also hydrate security, you have food security, and you have climate mitigation and adaptation. Even also talking about the socioeconomic aspects, which is very important and is fully internalized in the plan that I'm just mentioning. The plan, part of this current challenge and opportunities are connected with biodiversity, or more than this, are connected with environmental services. So a big bet in terms of how we will finance 12 million hectares is not only an issue to pay per hectare. We always say that restoration in Brazil or even all around the world could not be perceived as a cost, needs to be perceived as an investment. The country needs to internalize it as an investment because in the end, the cost of not doing, it's pretty much higher than the cost of, but also it's not only an issue to pay per hectare, it's how to really bring value to the forest that is stand, or the forest that needs or wants to be stand again, like through the restoration policy. So the finance strategy is one of the pillars of this whole, and their payments for environmental services mainly focus on water, biodiversity, and carbon for sure are one of, I think, in the center of this. It's not only from it that we will pay for the 12 million. You have a lot of rural credit in Brazil. You have a lot of other sources of also JEF projects. No, like, but the economic cycle needs to be fed by these new perspectives that really bring value to the the forest. What we have so far. Brazil has is one of the most, I think, competitive country for carbon associated with restoration nowadays. So there are a lot of companies who are already starting scale projects on restoration connected with carbon, and a high integrity carbon, very connected with social and environmental safeguards, but also a new, it's more than only restoration, it's a kind of a new infrastructure economic sector for the country. The second is water. Water is super confirmed, know how much you decrease the cost of the treatment of the water, and also you increase the quality of the water if you restore. So again, there is a lot of, and I think the new kids on the block is the biodiversity. No? We are working a lot with the connectiveness perspective. So beyond the area that is being restored, also you can measure many wins in terms of, or reverse the biodiversity loss, but more than this, you recover biodiversity by really restoring. So there's one state in the country, which is the Espírito Santo, that is already experimenting a subnational law connecting the producers who has a liability to be restored in their own private areas, and they are receiving some value per hectare restored connected with biodiversity. Another two layers that are important to talk about this beyond the restoration public national policy is for sure the payment for environmental services legislation that is being now regulated, and this is very, very important because it will bring trust and safety and transparency for investors, and all of us know that this is crucial to really increase. So it's almost ready. No, the one part was already published, but the whole decree that will bring the rules about how it will work will be published soon. And we are now also looking into another perspective with the most recent fund that was launched, still not operational, but that the TFFF, which is the Tropical Forest Fund Forever. It was launched by the President Lula and Minister Marina Silva in the last COP Dubai. And it's an interesting model where you pay per hectare conserved and per hectare restored, without a specific or a detailed measurement about how much. But the whole idea is to really engage countries into this global movement and hopefully really bring different sources of money to the conservation, to the restoration, and the value chains for sure. Thank you, sorry.
There was 5 minutes, precisely 5 minutes. Good job, Fabiola. Thank you. Ladies first, should we continue with you, Bambi?
Sure thing. Thank you. And so just to talk a little bit more about what I've been doing for the past 20-some years at Conservation International in terms of trying to really boost these biodiversity outcomes within green value chains. It's like, you know, we started working, I worked on our coffee program for a really long time. And I've always thought coffee was amazing because you can grow it under shade trees. So a tree under another tree is like the holy grail in terms of biodiversity outcomes, especially if you can do that under diverse shade trees that will boost biodiversity. But first and foremost, we needed to figure out where to work. Why would we work on coffee? We worked on coffee because it overlapped with biodiversity hotspots and protected areas. It's a sustainable use mechanism for if you're going to go in and try to create a new protected area, there are communities living in those protected areas and they need a livelihood benefit. And so if we could go in and promote sustainable coffee production and agroforestry-based and shade-grown coffee production, we could increase the biodiversity benefits of those places. So I think first and foremost, we always have to think about where are we going to work? And we have to work in the places that have large amounts of biodiversity still to be conserved, and then to Fabiola's point, to be restored as well and regenerated over time. And so we did these projects in Mexico and Costa Rica, Panama, and we can continue to do project after project after project, but we needed a way to reach scale. And one way to reach scale is to leverage the market forces that are actually buying that coffee. And so we thought we had a really great product. We're like, oh, these farmers are killing it. They're doing really great things around biodiversity. I'm sure everybody would want to buy this coffee. And so we started to shop the coffee around to different companies, thinking that they would love it. And they're like, well, we love the story. We love what you're doing with the communities. We love the biodiversity story, but the flavor is not quite what we're looking for. And so we had work to do to bring up the quality of that coffee over time. And we were fortunate enough to work with Starbucks, who was like, we do like the story, we want to buy this coffee, but it doesn't meet our quality standards. So they were fortunate enough, they engaged with us to work with those communities to improve the quality of that coffee over time, and to then start to purchase that coffee. And then, they worked with us to do those projects in other places, but then it became this question of they represent 3 to 4% of the world's coffee globally. So what if all the coffee that they purchased was done according to these better practices? And these better practices were everything from of course, enriching the soils and doing the agroforestry, but it was also no hunting, right? No cutting down trees, no deforestation, and protecting riparian zones, or actually restoring riparian zones if they were already converted to agriculture. Sometimes there was also a set-aside area that the farmers were actually managing for conservation purposes. So we were able to integrate all of those good biodiversity practices into their sourcing practices and their sourcing standards. And that became what today is called cafe practices, and it's responsible for 99% of Starbucks' coffee purchasing today. So that came out of those projects. It became the way that they purchase coffee, and it represents about 4% of the global coffee value chain. Every 2 years, we do an impact assessment of that program. And what we found is that about 400,000 farmers are impacted by that program. It's about 1 million hectares worldwide of coffee, but those farmers are actually managing over 2 million hectares of land. And there's about 117,000 hectares of set-aside areas for conservation that these farmers are managing, and the majority of them are smallholder producers. So by leveraging all of that work, we could actually start to send a strong signal through the marketplace that biodiversity is important to businesses and to markets and to consumers. It's felt like a huge breakthrough. Yet when I visited coffee farmers in Mexico and Colombia, all over the world, you could still see deforestation happening in the protected areas, sometimes driven by coffee, sometimes driven by other things. So we felt like we had made some major breakthroughs, but we were still seeing degradation happen over and over again in these landscapes. So we needed to figure out a way to go from beyond a supply chain mechanism to a landscape and a jurisdictional mechanism that actually worked together with not just the producers, but with the government and the market actors to align on what we want this area to look like into the future. What is the biodiversity outcome that we want for this place? What's the social and economic outcome that we need for this place? And what's the productivity that we can get out of this place as well? And how do we harmonize our goals around those 3 areas of work? And so that led to our work in jurisdictional approaches. We're doing these in Huila here in Colombia, also doing these with coffee in San Martin in Peru. And it's really about working with all those stakeholders to coalesce around what's our vision for sustainability and for nature positive production in this place. How are we going to measure that? And how do we align with the government targets that are already there? How do we align with what Fabiola just talked about in terms of you have targets to restore significant areas of land in Brazil? So if we were to do a jurisdictional approach in Brazil, we'd want to show how we're contributing to that target so that the government is also on board. We want to make sure that there's that alignment in terms of the NBSAPs and the NDCs, in terms of what we're doing is promoting that agenda and supporting that agenda. So we've taken that and we've done that in palm oil in North Sumatra as well, with large and smallholder palm oil producers. And it is this building of bridges across different stakeholders to think about how do we work together, how do we bring in not just one company, but maybe like 3 companies to invest in the conservation area, the restoration objectives, and the smallholder certification processes that need to happen. So in North Sumatra, for instance, we've been able to impact over 300,000 hectares in terms of improved management of protection areas. That aligns with the forest management units that the government has for that area. We've supported 1,500 smallholders in that process of getting certified to the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil Standards, and that's they've actually received over $270,000 per group of smallholders. In addition to what they would have received if they had just continued business as usual in those places. So these are just examples of how we have to make sure that this is good for biodiversity, but it's also good for the communities and it aligns with the governments. So I'll stop there.
Great.
And then we can continue the conversation.
Thank you for the story, how to reach scale. It was a bit longer than Fabiola's very concise, innovative policy approach that we heard from Brazil. Let's see how it goes with Isaac and Andrew. Carly, do we have Andrew Isaac's presentation on screen, please? Let's wait for your slides. You want to present yourself again, or some intro words before your slides come?
No,
there you go. There you go. That was fun.
Yes.
Please, Isaac, please.
Thank you. I'm presenting on the Jeff Integrated Program Star 7 that we are currently implementing, and is to upskill what we use our Star 5 and 7 to do. Yeah, so the Ghana Landscape Restoration and Small-Scale Mining Project has 2 parts.
Next one, please.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes, and we are using integrated landscape management approach for natural resource management at a scale to offer solutions across different sectors. And currently, there are about 6 sectors working together using this approach in managing the natural resources. And as I mentioned, is to upskill what we use our Star 5 and 6, that's the Sustainable Land and Water Management Project. Next. Yeah, the funding is coming from Jeff with 12 million, ProGreen, which is a German, 15 million, the extractive industry 0.6, and then government of Ghana, seeing what sustainable land and water management was able to achieve to the community, went in for an IDA loan of 75 million to add to this. So the total is $103 million. Next. And the objective of the project is to strengthen integrated natural resource management and increase benefits to the target communities within the savanna and the cocoa forest landscape. And as I mentioned, we have 2 thematic areas, the landscape restoration and then the small-scale mining, which deals with the reclamation of mine-out areas. But the landscape restoration deals with restoring degraded lands within the forest reserve, agricultural lands, wildlife corridors, and the institutions that are involved are the Ministry of Environment, Environmental Protection Agency, coordinating Food and Agriculture, Forestry Commission, Ghana Cocoa Board, we have Water Resource Commission, and then the Land Use and Spatial Planning. And we have World Resource Institute providing technical backstopping in terms of monitoring, data collection, and communication. Next.
Next one.
Yes, so these are the components of the project: institutional strengthening, sustainable crop and forest management. That's where most of our activities are. Then we have the artisanal mining and then project monitoring. And the fifth one is contingency that has no funding. When there is a disaster, then we gather all the resources and put it there. So we are praying that there won't be any disaster for us to lose the money. Next, please. Yeah, so, please, back.
One back. One slide back.
Yeah, so we started implementing the project in 2002, and we have the wildlife monitoring using the Earth Ranger and SMART, and the Earth Ranger has been, is the first in West Africa, and we've currently established 14,000 agroforestry. We are managing almost 1 million hectares of wildlife protected areas and sustainable forest management. We have established 18 community resource management areas. These community resource management areas are areas that are biological corridors for migratory animals from Ghana to Burkina to Togo. And the land within that corridors belongs to communities, families. So you need to bring them together and give them devolution of power for them to manage those resources. And we've managed to establish 18 CREMA areas. And then we are also assisting farmers to rehabilitate moribund farms. When I mention moribund cocoa farms, there are cocoa farms that are overaged, which are 30 years and above. And because the farmers do not have initial capital to rehabilitate those farms, they normally decide to go into the forest to create a new farm. So we are supporting them, and we are targeting about 2,000 hectares. We just started this year, and it's farmer-led. The farmers lead the activities, and we provide them with input incentives. And we've done 25,000 hectares of conservation in agriculture to improve agricultural lands. Then we've also work within 536 communities, implementing sustainable land and water management practices. And then we've also established 3,000 hectares of riparian vegetation within our water bodies, and also supported 52,000 farmers to adopt sustainable land and water management. And then the 3,000 hectares of enrichment planting is currently ongoing within the forest reserves and communities. Next.
We're about time. Are you about to finish? Yes?
Yes.
Thank you, Isaac.
Yes. Next.
Next.
Yes. So these are some of the trees that was planted 2022, and these are what we've achieved. Next.
Next slide. Yeah.
Yes, and these are some of the moribund farms we are talking about. So we clear the land, we provide incentives like plantain suckers, cocoyam, cocoa seedlings, then cover crops, tree cover crops, so that we improve the biodiversity within the cocoa farm. So food security is assured by the farmer, and the farmer maintains the farm, and within the next 3 years is able to get the yield for the cocoa. Next. And then the Earth Ranger that I mentioned about, we are using it currently in the Mole National Park, and we are using the first 2 Earth Ranger, and it's very innovative. And the park that we are using, the Earth Ranger, covers about 4,840 square kilometers. So it assists in reducing the human resources that you need in the field, assist in preventing human-wildlife conflict, because where there is a potential human-wildlife conflict, you get the signal from the community and they are able to deploy, and the rangers are also able to cover the whole area and ensure that any illegality they report next.
Next slide.
So there is a need for us to upscale this activity to improve and sustain biodiversity management. The communities are involved in the planning, and these are achieving good results. And there is a need for us to also blend the financial aspect with the technical support to ensure that we achieve the objective of the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Isaac. Impressive impacts for a tough reality in Ghana. I was there in March walking cocoa smallholder farms. Good. Let's switch to Andrew then. Andrew, how are you?
Yes, yes. Okay, good. Thank you, colleagues. And it's a great pleasure to be with you today. My name is Andrew Zakarienga. I'm a senior natural resource management specialist working in the World Bank. Basically, the team leader for the investment projects in Africa, South and East. Currently, I have a portfolio of approximately $300 million in Mozambique and Madagascar and South Africa countries. And today, I just want to give you a little bit of a flavor of a project that we just finished in Madagascar. It's called Sustainable Landscape Management Project. Next slide, please. So this innovative project for the country is integrating management of natural resources with production agricultural systems. The concept of landscape was introduced and mainstreamed into the agricultural production. And in more simpler terms, the project selected 5 sites in the north of Madagascar where the upper watersheds were protected and restored to ensure that the water flow would reach the rice paddies and agricultural fields. And the irrigation infrastructure canals would be also restored and maintained by communities. So the total cost of this project is about $150 million, also with contribution of GF and IDA funds and contribution of AFD, French development. So it was a first of a kind project in Madagascar, in the country, and it was a challenging but very successful project, I must say. Next slide, please. So in terms of the results, and here you see one of these landscapes with green areas highlighting upper watersheds that have been protected and restored. And in the center, you see the agricultural fields. So the results are on the screen. Basically, it's the introduction of this model itself. And this model then been later replicated in 3 other projects, World Bank operations. The special planning and new policies for landscape management, but then also established community organizations that have been and continue managing this infrastructure. The habitats brought under the sustainable landscape management. Irrigation systems repaired, farming extensions stations, and so forth. But also I wanted to touch base on a few lessons, because the projects that our clients, the governments like Brazil and Ghana and Madagascar are implementing, they're becoming more complex. The landscape approach is also not easy to implement. conceptualize and implement on the ground. So I think 3 lessons that we have drawn from this first experience in Madagascar is that early preparation of integrated land use plans is critical, because otherwise the delays are kicking in. Another lesson is that the modus of implementation. When you have Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Environment, in our belief, it's best if they are responsible for implementation of own activities, but then their coordination is done under the steering committee of the project. And then finally, the sustainability of these activities, those have to be embedded into the project design and implementation as early as possible. So that's the project in Madagascar. But also I wanted to mention similar integrated landscape management approach that is being implemented in Mozambique, where I also work. You know, the importance of this approach is in its value for reaching out to other sectors, other economic sectors that impacting the forest and biodiversity. And by doing so, we are reducing those impacts, reducing those risks that most of all coming from other sectors of the economy to the environment. And like other colleagues mentioned here, I think another important factor is scale. Exactly. This is what the World Bank is trying to do now, to look at the changes, look at the impact and at scale, how it could be done, also partially by bringing in the forces of the private sector and partnerships. What else I wanted to mention? Yes, that through my career, I see importance of the reaching out and working with colleagues across different sectors. First of all, with agriculture, energy and mining, with water sector, and also transport, because unfortunately, in many countries, forest and forest land is still seen as mostly timber for export, or for some domestic production, but also as a potential land for farming. And the environmental services like water, like protection services, and so forth are completely ignored. And then, when the land is deforested, we come to this sad point when we have to pay for this huge price, and this price comes to several generations ahead of us. So I hope that these interventions will continue, reaching out to scale and to across the sector, so that we could literally bring the market forces into play and incorporate the ecosystem and forest services into the market forces. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrew. Well, I'm glad we cut off the follow-up questions after each presentation, because now we already have some questions, and thanks to Kali, we have 15 minutes. So may I ask Isaac and Bambi, please? Yes, Isaac and Bambi, please. What is a successful integrated approach to sustain biodiversity management? Your examples. So how have you effectively how you've convinced the farmers, the cocoa farmers, and the mining sector to value biodiversity in the case of Ghana, Isaac?
Yeah, as I indicated, yes, there are different sectors involved. And during the planning stage, which we call community watershed planning, the communities are involved. And we saw the idea, they bring their problems, and they themselves bring solutions. And based on that, they select what they want to do in order to restore the land. So when we meet cocoa farmers who are willing and interested in rehabilitating their moribund farms, they will bring their names, they will indicate what they will need, and the project will tell them what the project can support. And we tell them we are doing restoration. So inorganic fertilizer will be minimized. The cocoa trees that we will fell, you cannot use it as firewood. You need to leave it on the land for it to decompose. That will improve the organic manure on the land. And then you have to plant what we call the shade trees, which are also timber trees within the cocoa farm. And in each hectare, I think about 7 to 10 that has to be planted. And all those things are investments in terms of future benefits to the farmers. So when we are able to do that and they understand the process and they are willing to do it, we support them. And when it comes to the agricultural land where food security is involved, we try to get them also on board to ensure that when they stop using tractors in plowing their fragile lands and ensure that organic manure is on the land, it improves their yields. When we have these climate change dry spells, they are able to sustain during these dry spells and also practice agroforestry, which will also improve the biodiversity within the land. Thank you.
Thank you, Isaac. Bambi, your experience?
I'll just add, I think Isaac explained it very well. I mean, we do the integrated land use plan, right, with the different stakeholders at this macro scale in the landscape. But then you have to couple that with what Isaac was talking about in terms of the community engagement approach, right? Trying to find communities and farmers who are open to working with you and leveraging the ones who are willing to, demonstrating what's possible through them, and then having the others follow. But a lot of it comes down to is providing economic incentives for this to happen, and providing the inputs that Isaac also talked about. So there's some initial investment, usually grant money, that has to come into play, and then it's about how do we sustain that behavior change over time through, layering on different type of market and ecosystem service incentives.
Perfect. Fabiola, what will be the role, how do you envision the role of indigenous and local communities in the implementation of your new restoration policy in Brazil?
Yeah, I think first, the public national policy was launched mainly focused to support the private owners, rural owners, to really solve their own gap. Through the forest code, they do have some percentage of their land to be restored, and then the regional Plan Avegi was launched for them. And then at this version, we included explicitly, the conservation units and the indigenous territories. First, because degraded land inside conservation units and indigenous territories, it's not possible, we cannot allow this. It's not only an issue of a legislation. We do have a legislation obliging the government to really restore, recover degraded land inside, because, as all of us, also biodiversity issues. But more than this, doing that, we can also bring then not only a beneficiary, the people who live inside the conservation units, our POCs in general, or indigenous people, but also support them to become economic actors of the restoration supply chain. So, and more than these, the conservation units and the indigenous territories can be a catalyzer for different practices, different perspectives for the landscape and the rural properties that are close to them and etc. So I think this is the main bet. We do believe that the next 2 years, we just saw that there are 3 million hectares of degraded land inside conservation units and indigenous territories in the country. So this will be the main priority of the government to really bring them to a different level. And I just want to mention one thing about how to not incentivize the rural or the producer, no, but the biodiversity credit together with carbon, etc., could be the only way to change the cost of opportunity from conversion to conservation and restoration. This is the main bet that we are doing here.
Good. Thank you, Fabiola. And Andrew, after a project ends, after funding ends, from your experience in Madagascar and Mozambique, what do you see as the biggest challenge in sustaining the activities in the landscape that you triggered through your projects and funding?
Thank you. It's a great question, and it's always always a challenge. But like I was saying in the lessons that we have learned, I think the opportunity for the teams implementing the project and also designing the projects is to think of market forces and also think how these activities will be sustained through the revenues, and by incorporating or developing models of sustaining these activities. For example, say the service of community organization in maintenance of the irrigation canal, right? By organizing them and bringing them together and saying that probably small portion of your income could go into the joint small fund that will be used to maintain this canal over the next 10 years. That's what, and by setting this up, that's what sustains these activities. I've seen such small little things that were thought through at the project implementation and project design. For example, in South Asia, in the small villages that were using solar panels, solar electric fences to protect themselves and the fields from the human-wildlife conflict. And yes, investment costs were paid by the project, but then the maintenance of these electric fences was done by community funds, organized like that by the project. And people see importance of that and keep bringing money and keep protecting themselves and their fields through these activities.
Thank you, Andrew. I think we can have one last question around the role of small-scale finance mechanism to support local communities. Yesterday I heard in a forum of the International Land Coalition from a farmer that is leading farmer associations in several countries in South Asia, that they're giving prices and financing of as little as $500 or $1,000 to each farmer, and that can really make the difference. That will motivate a farmer to have a behavioral change towards more regenerative agricultural practices, or integrating biodiversity, or eliminating highly hazardous pesticides and so forth. All right, and from my point of view, adding to your answers, Andrew, when you start with a feeling of trust, if you start creating trust within communities through the participatory approaches that I think all of you are aiming to implement or have implemented already, and get that dynamic in the communities rolling, and also include the youth with new technologies, right, tablets, etc., monitoring impacts, I think then we have a much higher chance that impacts will last a little bit longer. I see here 3 minutes more on the screen. I would like to, it's all right, we can have a discussion on the coffee break with our great panelists. I would like to wrap up and also give you some final words to close, yeah? So what I heard as common themes here from our panelists, and also what we could hear from the questions was, well, the participatory approaches are a must, showing, demonstrating, and explaining the value of biodiversity to the production sectors, to the smallholders, to even the mining sectors. We need the capital, the soil, the biodiversity to keep working and produce the livelihoods in the areas that we are or you are all working in. And I think we've heard really great examples that have brought impacts or will start to bring impact and behavioral change. And what I've heard over the last days, also in the green zone, everything's about trust, right? You create a relationship of trust, work with the communities, work in a really genuine participatory approach, and somehow you will see the results. Bambi, would you like to add? Isaac and Fabiola and Andrew, please. Let's have our closure here together.
I think you covered it very well, Oliver. I guess the only thing I would add in terms of, we talked a lot about like what we do at the community level. And I think there's also just been this maturation of commitments by the private sector, from what we do in our supply chains to not wanting deforestation in our supply chains, to thinking about nature and climate commitments, and how that can actually lead to the financing that's necessary to achieve this at scale, and not only depend on the multilaterals or the foundations, et cetera, but we can actually leverage bigger market forces and bring more finance to bear. One analysis that we did after seeing companies do nature commitments was if we could get the top 70 companies worldwide that are relying on food and agriculture, retailers and consumer goods companies, to make nature commitments, that could lead to maybe 80 million hectares of land restored, better managed and protected, and about over $1 billion in financing. So that's the potential that we have to go after to be able to have these amazing projects on the ground.
Great, Bambi. Isaac?
Thank you. To ensure sustainability of whatever we are doing, all the sectors are involved. The activities have been mainstreamed into those sectors, and there is no consultants involved. It's mainstream workers. So even when funds are not there, as part of their own activities do. And then within the community, to ensure sustainability, we have what we call the Village Savings and Loan Association, which any community that we move into, they establish among themselves. So whatever they get, they save and then plow it back. So since we started 2010, the communities that we started with, when you go there, they are still practicing, and some of them have even upskilled the activities. And we hope this will bring a lot of biodiversity improvement within the communities. Thank you.
Zach. Fabiola.
Well, I think 2 points. First, I really like the word trust. But also more than this, how to really change the approach. Do not consider indigenous people, local communities as beneficiary of our projects, but please consider as a political and economic players. And more than this, they are guardians. They are really, really protecting the forest. All data shows that. And secondly, the biodiversity laws needs to be included as soon as possible into the voluntary agreements and commitments around, like from the finance sector, the private sector. So alongside the free deforestation supply chains, also the biodiversity laws should be monitored and disincentivized through, I don't know, closing some markets or even do not giving finance for them. BNDES in Brazil just announced it. I'm not sure if I'm able to say that, but I'm saying they just announced that they will stop to invest in those who do not show that they are not contributing to biodiversity law. So this needs to be increased as well. And from the governmental perspective as well, not only private sector.
Thank you, Fabiola. Last minute to you, Andrew, please.
Thank you very much. I have a challenging task, but I fully agree with my colleagues and wanted only to highlight that we see conservation as development, and this is the paradigm shift that many countries are adopting, and this wonderful target that collectively countries globally have adopted, 30 by 2030, brings us to the reality that in 5-6 years, by that time, we would have to understand how to manage this land and waters sustainably, protect it better. And to do that, exactly, we need to figure out the policies and also the financing mechanisms, how to sustain and increase the management of these resources sustainably, including biodiversity. Thank you very much.
That was faster. Thank you to all our great panelists. Conservation equals development. Let's keep up that great discussion and the great work together. Big applause.